Good morning, Mayberry. We aren't going to talk about the rebranding and conflation of slavery, fallout, general racism, and class war. We aren't going to talk about PETA activists de-anthropomorphizing black people to make their points right now. We don't have time. We're going to talk about whatever I edit in next. Because I'm the producer, I'm the host, and I made this music. I'm Shift Orion, and I'm not waiting on Superman. Oh, hi there. It's your curmudgeon-y bitch of a host again, Shift. I'm about to have a conversation here with Tiana J again. And we get into a number of topics. And I just want to make clear that I have a phrase that I've been using for some years. Trying to get something off of the internet is like trying to get pee out of a pool. And I just want to make clear, first of all, that that's something that I have said for a long time, and knowing that, have posted wild things on the internet for years. Additionally, at a certain point, an incident interrupts the conversation. That incident turns the conversation onto the topic of the pandemic. Now, I make a comment when I am in a heated mentality about a reaction I had in seeing people posting that they were planning secret parties in like April. In that period of time, I blew up their threads and I posted that I was gonna call cops because I'm gonna just sick the enemy of my enemy on. And I said this, I wanna be clear that this was words. I did not call cops on anybody that I didn't do this. I did cut people off. I did have heated conversations with a lot of people. But I just want to be clear that I did not call cops because fuck the police, defund the police, abolish police. But I want to be very clear because I definitely sound like Karen at multiple occasions. One last thing. I use the term goobers to describe a type of person. And I want to be clear about the definition of goober. Imagine eating a goober and chewing, and just imagine that you're miming that. That's a goober. I just am handing you that. Now, without further ado, yeah, I don't know. I've been having so many conversations about talking. What words are people using, and do those same words make sense? Listening to our episode while I was editing it, we did that like 6 times.
Talking about talking, metacognition, and thinking about thinking. That's like, I feel like while I was listening to it, I was like, listen to the way we speak. And like, I was like, honestly, I heard myself say revelatory, and I was like, I know that word.
Yeah, you sounded like you had been there before when you said it too. I was like, oh, pastors on the pulpit. You know, there was a couple times that I was listening to myself and I would use words that I was like, that's not a word, but I couldn't edit it out without removing the entire sentence. So I would just leave it in, hoping people's ears would patch over it. So that's good. Yes, it's a trippy thing to listen back on this stuff, to edit it, because I got to listen to it over and over and over again in small sections. And then like yesterday I learned, I mean, I didn't really learn this. This is something I kind of had noticed, but some dots connected for me where I realized that there's a podcast that I'm kind of kicking around the idea of being on, and it's a bunch of people that are very unlike myself. It's a bunch of normcore cishet bro types, and I am considering going on there, but it's like I guess it's just in the consideration of going into that space. I've been kind of looking at the dynamics of what is that environment, right? Like, this is a platform that I'm putting together, and so it's like, you know, where are people coming if they're going to be coming here, or where are they if they are here? Not everybody needs to know before they arrive, but and some people showed up to set the tone at the beginning. Shout out to Ryan, who's running the Facebook now. We're on Facebook. Yeah, it's horrible. It's terrible. And there we are. So one thing that I was probing around about was like, well, are they going to edit things? You know, how are they going to do things? Because one of my colleagues was on there, and he was like, well, I don't know. I don't know that they do that. And I was like, huh? Like, in my mind, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, they just like start a call up and just yap however long they want and don't edit any of it. None at all. Like, not a little bit. Nothing. You don't. What? You know. They just don't edit a damn thing at all. They just start talking and they run on, and that's the way it goes. And I've heard a couple of podcasts that do this, and I just can't wrap my mind around what it is that goes through the minds of people who don't edit any of their content but come out with like regular episodes. And their episodes are like 3.5 hours long too. I was like, what is this? And so the thing that I noticed, the theme I noticed is that in my reviews of podcasting and then in assessing this one as I'm thinking about going on to it, cishet men don't feel like they need to edit themselves. It's cishet men that do this. There's no podcast I have found that seem like they don't do at least a little bit of trimming, cleaning up before they put it out. It is a cishet male thing to do this way.
To take up space.
Just for no reason. And then I saw that last night. I like connected that in my mind last night. And then today there was a meme up about why do cishet men start podcasts instead of going to therapy? I was like, damn. Whoa.
Well, I mean, do we know the answer to that though? Like, I think, yeah, I can't imagine 3.5 hours of, one podcast with the same. First of all, you're saying you're going into this or thinking about going into this podcast. Sounds like you are literally about to do the actual experimentation of how many different ways ice can melt.
Yeah, right? Oh, these are black guys too, I should mention. Maddening.
Oh, I mean, well.
Maddening. Yeah.
Whew. Well, that ice be melting too, especially on the on the LGBT when we get to that point.
That's the thing about it. They got a lot of questions about queerness, but they do that thing where they act in ways that are super uninviting to anybody who would give them those answers, thusly creating a fucking echo chamber like a bunch of goobers.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that works, actually. Like, I'm like, okay, so there's an opportunity to kind of break this thing down. And that's the thing I'm here for, because frankly, I don't give a shit about like their ideas about what the world's made of. They don't know I'm here, you know?
Right.
So, it's a funny thing because, just like listening to people talk like that, like they think their opinion is worth anything. They think that anything they have to say is like important to the narrative of anyone else's lives. And then they get into echo chambers and they blast it really fast around. And that's what creates what really matters when they start galvanizing and ganging up and pulling that weird energy and being like, we've decided together. 2 or more of us have decided that a marginalized person is full of shit. Fuck you, right? That's what they get to do. That's where it becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why they get together to do it, too, because it's worthless on its own when it's just a thought.
That's like when people are talking and they're like, they pull people into their argument just to like have the same opinion. You're like, but you do realize just because that's their opinion, also, it is still not a fact or anything of reality in my experience. So you can continue with that, but it means nothing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've started getting to a point where I feel like I'm effortlessly throwing that weight back at them, or like letting them, if they want to come running at me with that weight, I step out of the way and they can hit the wall with it.
Right. I
don't have to respect people who just kind of get into echo chambers and howl about whatever the fuck they want to, you know? Like why would I waste my energy and time to even consider what a person like that's thinking when they don't even know they can get outside of the echo chamber. They don't even know they're in a fishbowl. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, what? I could go talk to a squirrel too.
Right.
You know, that sounds more fun. That sounds like a more productive experience. And I might learn something from the squirrel.
Because they're not there to learn anything. You're there to validate the narrative of what they already think is real. So basically, it's not even about learning anything. It's about, let me have you over here so you can prove to me that everything I thought was already true.
Yeah. It's frustrating because I have other things I want to talk about in my life, other things I'd like to be doing with my time, and yet, like, I get dragged back to like, it's like people like it's like the starting line, and they're like, go, and then like I'm in a box, like there's like walls around me all the time, and then I get bullied for not making it anywhere beyond the fucking start line because I'm constantly having to explain something about this space. Or does that even make sense?
Oh yeah. That makes sense to me because, I mean, to me, at this point, when you get to a certain point, for me, I'm like, oh, so you guys are still there. Okay.
Right.
I don't know if I have time to give myself to this conversation because we're so beyond like where I want to be. I'm just gonna be answering questions in this box where I cannot get out of. You guys are all headed off to the races, and I'm just like, so, still on the most basic questions about my existence, which shows me that you didn't even care enough to even try to like. Right now, we live in the world where there are so many just outlets of people spewing their existence, their experience, their life, and you couldn't have even looked into any of that. You know what I mean? It's just so much out there. I know what you mean by being in that box because it's just like, come on, man, come on. Like, I'm a woman with facial hair, with a beard, and people are always like, oh my, I'm like, yo, like, come on. All right, we're gonna do this.
How do they handle that?
Yeah.
Because when I asked you what your pronoun was, you were kind of like, anything. That was your answer, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, I know who I am. Like, I'm Tiana. That's who I am, and I have this body, and this is like, so I can see that. Like, it doesn't bother me if you say he or she or whatever, because I know that you're looking at me through the lens of what society has told you a girl or a boy should look like. So over the phone, when someone calls me sir, I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I guess this is what a sir's voice would sound like. So you would assume that. And that is not a problem for me. At the same time, in person, when people see me at first and then they're like, oh, okay. But then it's like, I can see how you see what you're seeing. So I'm not offended by it at all. But as long as that what you're seeing is not a reflection about who I actually am or how I feel about myself, so it doesn't really bother me how people see me. But it is informative because
yeah,
it lets you see how people are actually consuming you. So that's interesting part of it. And I mean, being a black person, being in the queer community, so it's like, how sometimes some shit is happening. Like, I also am a boss. I own businesses, so sometimes I'll be quick to be like, "Oh, it's because I'm black," and then I'm like, nah, it's because I'm a woman that runs a company and that should be a thing. So it's like you're always trying to figure out why people are treating you the way that they are.
That's such a frustrating calculation to run. I hate that one. I know. It just starts too. It's just like you're going about your day and all of a sudden that math has to run. Fucking
right.
God.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just an interest, and this is only through quarantine. I didn't really intend to grow a beard, but during quarantine, I was in the house and I didn't have to like make my appearance look a type of way to go out. And I used to have it, and then realizing that really ruled me a little bit. Like, oh, I can't be out. I gotta pluck my hairs and then like, oh well, fuck it, I'll just let it grow, and whatever people think, that's what they think. That's an Aries thing. Like, you're uncomfortable with something, then blast it all the way out and get comfortable with it.
Right.
And so, yeah, and now I'm just like, what am I gonna look like when I take it off? I don't know if I'm gonna like that person again. Like, that's gonna be weird. So I just haven't pulled off the band-aid.
That's what's up. I mean, you had it when I met you. It would have never occurred to me that you didn't have it ongoing, that it wasn't a part of your aesthetic for like a while, And then, I've been in the Bay for so long and gotten to like accidentally trip into just so many wonderful, I don't know how are there so many of these people running around acting like they understand that there's limits to how you can express. And if you don't do it this way, you get ridiculed or alienated or ostracized or kind of just like weird eyebrowed,
Right.
like, oh, how novel, like at the very least, or like what, there's all this weird stuff. And they're precious, like they're simple, like I'm looking at them like, okay, like pat on the head, whatever, and like we could have better connection, I think, between the two, like between those two concepts.
Right.
Like I don't really want to be in a position where I'm like, all right, we're just not going to be able to see each other, so I might as well just we can mutually dehumanize. Like, pat, and all right, I don't have to absorb what you're thinking or saying. You think it's very important, even though you're laughing the whole time or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Those people.
people.
Yeah, I liked your energy when we first met, and I asked your pronoun, and you said whatever. Because for me, I just went with they because I got to struggle with neutral pronoun. Using they as a singular pronoun is a difficult thing for my brain to do.
Same.
And so I was like, oh, good, it's an opportunity for me to practice that in like a container. And I got my god kids. I got two god babies that are both gender neutral, and their parent is gender neutral. I still have a struggle with it. So I was like, oh, I'll take that as an opportunity. And that was all I thought about it. I don't know. I don't know why stuff that's that simple would seem weird to somebody. You know, like what about that? Why not just do it like that and move on to whatever else? Like, isn't there anything else?
Right. It's just people are so committed to their definitions of what is real and true.
It's just with negative space, like when there's no information there and we have room to project, it's like,
because then people want you to prove why whatever you're saying is okay, or like why, like, okay, so now I have a bunch of questions to ask you. Why do you do it this way instead of that way? And it's like, okay, but if you were genuinely asking those questions to try to understand how I got to this place rather than trying to like see fault in it, there's a difference, and you can tell the difference in tone and in like if someone's really inquisitive. Because I'm an inquisitive person, and I'm oftentimes asking people questions about the things that they're doing and why they do it that way, because I'm literally trying to understand the process of like, wow, how could we be so different, and how did you get to that, and how did I get to this,
right.
And just the marvel of it all. Whereas a lot of people are just trying to figure out, like, how is this even real? And it's almost assaulting to them.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, like, what it is that like if I was going to respond to something so aversely, they've got like scripts for this. It's like when we enter their environment, when we're on their radar, a certain program just activates inside them. What is that? Like, what is the thing? Because I had it, but I got through it. Like at a certain point, just enough information and things inside of me, internal and external information, it just like dissolved that block, kind of.
Right.
Kind of. That's a real oversimplification.
You just have to be ready for your mind to be open, like change. And a lot of people are not, like, because then, I don't know, like you said, what is it? Is it the fear of erasure? Is it the fear of, I think it's just like sometimes it's like you believed or thought something so long. So it's almost like humiliating to be like, wait, it can be like this. And I thought it was this the entire time. And I'm like a 40-year-old person that has never, like, I think that sometimes just that overload of information is sometimes threatening to their mindset. Cause then it's like, well, what else? No, it can't be this. It can't.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday about masking, like in a few contexts. Like, there's like masking for like neurotypical purposes, like norm core, whatever stuff in general, just like whatever the inside of your head is, not letting the people in your interaction that you're having really like experience the authenticity of what's going on in your experience.
Yeah.
Like we got into that on the topic of like dealing with relationships with people who are privileged in a different way than we are, and how they don't recognize that we're doing extra work to even be there at that first step to build a bridge.
Mm.
And like it's just like, so like in doing that, it's like they're coming and they're just like being themselves, and so they're assuming that's what's going on too. And so as they're moving forward, they have all this room to just project on the negative space that the masking leaves, right?
Right.
And so then that creates a greater opportunity for more masking. Not an opportunity, it's a demand. It's more like a vacuum, a pump that like once it starts going, it's siphoned enough energy and it starts moving on its own flow. Just what that actually means, it just like it starts off with an uneven weight distribution, and as it continues, it exponentially increases on a disproportionate level.
Right. Because at that point, then you're like, well, now I have to act like this. And then it all falls onto itself, because when you come in and you're masking who you really are. And then this person is like, oh, okay, we're the same. So let me say all this shit, and then you're like, oh, well, or at that point, then you decide whether to continue because like you could be like, wait, hold up, what the fuck, like, but I mean, in most parts of society, you have to fit in. So it's like, okay, I gotta like code switching. Like this is who I have to be here in this place in order to be accepted or to be even like seen as a viable part of humanity.
Yeah. Well, and to be just on, not to like drag it into this mode. We're gonna stay on the seriousness of it, but like masking and code switching can be super fun too, and it's like a skill set that is useful in a bunch of environments. And I like acting like as a hobby, and so like playing with the world as a stage, if my head's in the right space, can be different. However, what the fuck? Why does this shit have to be happening all the goddamn time? Like
Yeah,
does that resonate? Like,
yeah.
was that too?
No, because like, why does it have to be going on? It's like almost the. I don't want to give us any like virtues, but I feel like it takes like brave people to be willing to just be like, nah, like I'm just gonna act like myself in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like when you code switch, then it's like, okay, I can. And then it's like when you realize you have that power that you can, then it's like, okay, now I have this power and I have to be like responsible with it. But
Right.
I feel you.
Yeah, but I mean, responsibility, the ability to respond, ability is a moving target that is like in everybody, like there's somebody that's got the most capable mind every waking hour, and they also sleepwalk like a motherfucker and do crazy shit in their sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
responsibility is a moving target. It's really weird, and it can get different in different ways. So like, yeah, I guess that's the thing I'm really kind of sitting with today, because I am actively all the time. I am in pain so often, and I'm trying to be a generous bitch. I'm trying to be a generous bitch with my love. There's so little of it these days. But I've been thinking about like conceiving the whole thing as a theater. The audience is like witnessing a certain type of shit. And this is, not to like objectify. It's like in a relationship, you're both on a stage and you're both in the audience, like for each other and for yourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. Okay. In that, right, like with that dynamic that we've described with the weight distribution and the masks, with that other person, that person of privilege who's not really, they're just kind of there, they're doing their thing. And not that they're not aware of things, because I deal with people who are complex. So I'll have people who are like very privileged, but they're extremely neurodiverse and like have a lot going on. And we do find places to relate, but they're these small islands in space that sometimes look like they're closer than they actually are. And I'll go to reach for them and they're like a million miles away and already burned out. And I'm just seeing light that, was there in the past or something. Like, sometimes poems just erupt. I don't know what to say.
Right. That was poetic.
Gosh. I just made myself emotional. Oh my goodness. Okay, so uh, the thing I've been thinking about is like what happens when it goes from being like, it's like Bambi, it's like frozen, and then it turns into hostile. It's like the mask shatters, or this last year, I've been taking my mask off and throwing it at people. Like once I realize it's not serving us,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh shit, can I take this off? And if they don't allow it, if they don't want it off, I throw it at them. And I don't know what changed to make that happen. And I don't know how. I don't know how else to be. I don't think it's an unproductive approach.
But it's almost like you consented. You're like, okay, I'm gonna wear this mask, and as soon as you realize that the unmasked version of you will not be accepted, then you're like, well, fuck it all. This is who I am. Like,
Right.
so in a way, the wearing of the mask, you were hoping it would serve you in some way. Like, if I maybe just gently drop these jewels of who I am on people, but then the very first, maybe small, little thing that you let out, you're like, well, you can't handle this, then you can't handle this. Like, you know?
Sis. Like, yeah. Dang. Yeah. Yeah.
And so by wearing the mask though, that's what we kind of like bottled ourselves up so to the point where at a certain point, you know, the shaken soda is gonna explode.
What do we do when these are all acts of generosity? You know, like I know not all progressives are being asshats on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Some of them really do just like their privilege and they like the rhetoric. Some of them are really actually trying to figure out the right way to balance it all. You know, and so I'm sitting here in my life trying to figure out because I made a bunch of videos yesterday about this on my Instagram. Like I got all these white people in my life that are like, another white person's doing this shit to you. And I'm like, it's y'all. It's all of y'all. Like different times with all of y'all. Most of y'all, most of the time. And then they're all different. So then the ones that are like less like that, I'm like, oh shit, do I have to explain to them I'm not that? And then if I do, they're like, I knew, you know,
Right.
like I was fine. It wasn't a thing. But it's always work even when they're cool because of the ones that aren't cool. Or the times it's not cool with the ones that are cool. Because again, with responsibility, it's a moving thing. And we might not have capacity 1 minute or one day and then have capacity again later that day, the next week, whatever. So, yeah, I guess I've just really been thinking about like a lot of like, what is that experience got to be like to have like, cause I know I'm intense, but I can't know what I'm like to experience, you know, like what is it like to be in relationship with me outside of my head? I have no idea. Um, but I can conceptualize it, and that one's got to be wild. It's wild for me internally, and
Right.
like the reactions that I get are wild. But it's like it gets to a certain point where it's like you're like holding something precious, and you start it like something happens, it gets knocked, and you start to go to catch it, and you fumble it further and further, and like it's like in bullet time, like one sweep after another is you're knocking it closer to the ground faster and harder, like kind of shit in those modes.
Yeah.
I'm like hiccuping poems. It's like a hiccup thing.
Yeah.
Little tiny ones. Just like,
Bars.
oh shit.
Yeah. I think that people that we come into community and contact with have to realize in the same way that people understand vets coming home from war and what do they call it, PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of us are living with current traumatic stress disorder, like in real time.
Oh.
Like we are currently experiencing trauma. We have experienced trauma. We're currently always in the mode of trying to lessen our trauma. Like people have to realize that. So the thing is that you can communicate and you can get over and through anything if you have decided that you want to be in relationship with a person or persons. So it's like, okay, if you are armed with the knowledge that this is going to be, you know, this is the type of relationship that I'm entering into and there's going to be work that and it's going to be different, then it's like, okay, you can get through that, but there's like rules to that. You can't make it by yourself. You have to be honest. You have to communicate, but also by going into these relationships with our masks on, we handicap them.
Right.
So it's like we kind of have to make sure that we are always like, because we don't know how it is to experience ourselves, but we do know internally that we are that it's rough just being inside of us. So it's like, okay, I know that about myself and I'm acknowledging that. So I'm going to let you know that, and it will not be on display at all times. But when it comes out, we going to have to get through it. Are you down for that? People are not down to have those type of real conversations from the beginning. And the more that we get comfortable and like start to, you know, that's the thing is you have to get comfortable. You have to have someone that kind of shows you that that's okay. So then you can feel that way. Oh no.
What's that noise?
My
You got an emergency alert on your phone?
Yeah. Some stay at home.
Is it coronavirus or the fire down there?
This says new public health stay-at-home order in your area. COVID-19 is spreading rapidly. Stay home. Wow.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the COVID-19 and the stay at home, and why couldn't everybody just listen at first for a second, for 1 second, look in the same direction, one direction. Everybody had to go dive into YouTube and go different directions down different motherfucking rabbit holes. Why? God damn it.
Why?
That's just me. That's me howling into the abyss. That's a rhetorical question. I understand humanity is a bunch of moving parts. I was in the weirdest headspace when the pandemic first came here and started locking us down because I had to be on lockdown. And I had a friend in Rio de Janeiro who informed me of some horrific things that were happening in his environment. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then I went to one little concert, not a lot of people in it, big place. Like it's like a wine tasting bar, and it's spread out, like it's like a whatever. And I'm sitting in there, and I'm like looking at what people are touching. I'm like looking at them wiping their face and sticking their hands in their pockets. And I was like, oh, I've been trying actively to not pay attention to this coronavirus. The novel coronavirus was what they were calling it at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to not even pay attention to that. It looks like some hoaxy weird ass, just some fucking whatever kind of, okay, the internet's fun. I already did the Nibiru thing. I did the 2012 thing. I did all the anonymous stuff. I did Alex Jones before he went crazy. And then I went to Occupy and like all of it, whatever. So I didn't do much Alex Jones, but he was in the circle of shit that came into my fucking sphere. So the coronavirus, especially because they all had like bats in them when I first saw them, I was like, what is this shit? And they were all coming from racists. They were all coming from racist like hoteps that I follow to keep an eye on those motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So I was like, I keep an eye on the hoteps, by the way. That's a command, especially to white people. If you don't know what hoteps are, get on the fucking internet. Look them up, follow them, watch them.
Yeah.
Get your ass on some fucking business. Fuck. So I was trying to not pay attention, and then all of a sudden I caught myself actively doing like mental maintenance in a public space around just germ awareness. So that was the last time I went out. And then it was like 3 days later, I had some stuff change in my life where things just got more serious and I had to be more locked down and protective about vectoring. And
right.
The day after that, maybe 2 days after that, it started to become a conversation that it was coming here. And then it was like a couple of weeks later, 2 weeks later, the North Bay in California was locking down first. And so I've been taking it seriously at a different level and kind of looking at people like, wait a second, guys, now that you have been told, can we wait and see what they want to do? Hold up. Like, we just need to wait. And it's a bunch of things were kind of going on in my mind that I didn't realize weren't gonna be available in most people's minds. I was thinking about like, I wasn't alive and around during the AIDS pandemic, the initial parts of it, but I've listened to my elders a lot and I've heard about it. And so like the idea that like a new disease and like there's going to be like different information at different times, and if different countries or like different fields of science, like different institutes are like looking into it, they're all going to be finding different things because it's different people using different equipment with different mentalities. And so they might notice things. Some of them might be wrong, and then they got to check each other's data. But all that becomes public information for a little while. And so the fact that people started to get tripped up on like, well, is this even real? They're saying all this different shit, kind of stuff was like, wait, no, hold on, everybody, wait a second, hold up. But then a lot of the people in my life were folks that I didn't want to go into, well, the AIDS pandemic stuff. Like I was afraid that would just set them off on a different direction of division from being able to hear me.
Right.
And so I just shut the fuck up and hold up. And then in April, the second week of April, was like a bunch of people I knew who knew better were just doing dumb shit. They just broke down and they were like, oh, if I get drunk first and then I sneak out at night and I go home before I sober up, it's almost like it didn't even happen. Seemed to start in April.
And that was barely into it. In April, people were already.
We locked down at the end of March. And by mid-April, people were sneaking around. And by June, it was over.
Yep.
And May, my birthday was in May. I planned at the beginning of May, I was like, I'm gonna do like a whole like a yard cleaning the day before. I'm gonna vacuum and do all my dishes and order some nice food. And then I just like downloaded a racist Wild West mobile game on my phone. And I was just this white dude running through whatever fucking nonsense land. They had some mystical, just horrible, horrible things going on in this stupid fucking mobile game I played all day on my birthday. To mind my own business. I just wanted to mind my own business is my point. I was doing anything to mind my own goddamn business. And finding people going out after, seeing how many people just didn't give a shit, blowing it off in all these different directions. I'm just kind of sitting here like, no, it just was for nothing, basically, as far as I can tell, other than to solidify. Like my situation is like it's a little buttress in this bullshit, basically. Sorta. There's got, it's as much of a buttress as a buttress can be. These things require maintenance, and there's always a draft somewhere. But yeah, that's all the fuck I have to say about it.
Right? I just think the way information travels nowadays really just allowed people to hear and choose which facts they decided were actually real. So it's like people were just like, oh well, if you're outside, the sun kills it. Like, okay, so we could do things outside. Oh, I don't know. I just think people just decided. Also, so many things because I feel like in the media they were saying things that they didn't know. One of my pet peeves is when people say stuff and they're not sure. Like
right.
If in the media they could have said like, yo, we don't know what the fuck is going on, but we're giving you the information that we have, because so many things change. Like one day it was on every surface and then the next day it was only through the air, and I was like, okay, that makes sense,
Where'd you
I
hear
guess.
that?
Huh?
Where did you even hear that? I never even heard that one.
See, so I remember when it was like, you have to, I was wiping down like delivery and groceries with, Lysol and stuff. And then they said, well, it's just droplet transmission through the air. And then I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense. I read that if it has to get into your actual like lungs. And they're like, if it gets into your mouth, it's likely that it'll go into your digestive system and it will never get into your lungs. You'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. But then like you have to like, I'm not a scientist. I don't know. So then I'm like asking people that I know that are in, the healthcare field, what do you think? And all of them are saying, don't listen to any of it because they don't know what the fuck they're saying. They don't know what the fuck this is.
Yeah.
So then people are just in their bubble of either Fox News or CNN or whatever the fuck, and choosing which facts are theirs. And no one trusts the government, and it's like, well, I mean, I can see why you don't trust the government. So here we are in this circle fuck of like, how did we get here? But then I guess I can see how we got here.
These anti-maskers have gotten me breaking my own morals, because usually my thing is anybody who's questioning the government for any reason whatsoever, I'm here for it from the jump and we could go from there. But when your move is to bring your body into a public space and act like a fucking germ bomb,
yeah,
like that's not, I can't do that.
Right.
I can't do that with you. Like, yeah, and if your solution for like, I'm upset with the government, I don't trust the government, is to go bring a gun into a public space and start shooting random motherfuckers, I'm not vibing with that shit either. Similarly, same thing. Because it's like, for me, like I frankly, personally, at this point, don't really even necessarily personally believe in COVID, because I've done such a good job of keeping myself protected. It's not near me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then like, I cut people off because it made me sad and sick to see them do things. Like if they were posting pictures out in public doing shit together, and then I'd see two people together and then see them in different pictures with other people, just seeing people moving through public spaces, or how they're using their body, if they're touching surfaces that look like they're commonly touched and taking pictures that way. It's just things that I'm noticing, that I'm like, why are people acting this way right now when we don't know anything?
Right.
And it just made me nervous, because simultaneously I was hearing about like, oh, it's not just respiratory, it causes this blood issue, and that was a real mysterious thing at the time. Like it was just like, I didn't have any data. All right, people started having strokes and leg amputations and shit like
Yep.
that, like limb amputate, like that part. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop pretending that this is a joke, and I'm gonna get aggressive and loud about it. And that's when I started like telling people proactively that weren't in my immediate inner circle what was on my mind about that. Because people were posting that they were trying to have secret parties and do, like, oh yeah, we're so pent up, we're gonna do this thing once, like kind of thing. And I'd blow it up. I'd be like, don't. If I see some shit like this on my timeline, I'll call cops. I'm not even a cop caller, but the enemy and my enemy can go keep each other busy. For real? Get it off my timeline. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I'm alone. I'm minding my business. I'm being good. I'm being responsible. I'm taking care of people. I'm managing a lot of shit right now. I have no desire to see that kind of bullshit, mindless. It's not even mindless. It's mindful
Brazen.
to come up with justifications. Yes. Brazen. And like, it just would have been a couple of weeks. For me, I've been struggling with, because I was homeschooled in the specific environment I was, because of the way that the religious abuse that I had went, and because of the type of disability that I had when I entered adulthood, I'm used to isolation and like not having resources for a long time. I'm used to figuring out what to do mentally with that, because there's not a solution externally sometimes. Like, there's no like, oh, I'm going to do these ways. Also, because of the nature of all those things, I don't have a lot of like uh, adaptable, like if my routine gets messed with, if the predictable ways that I can access things get messed with, I don't function well. I really have to do a lot of work to compensate for that. It's possible, but it's a lot of work. So it's not like this year's been easy, but I do have a different kind of like mental training to go into, to be like, oh, I just have to wait this out.
People just don't like to be told what to do. That's really how I feel about it. But then again, we had a president. No one really told us what to do.
Nobody was telling anybody what to do.
I think, isn't the synchronicity of having, when you were talking earlier about the AIDS epidemic, like the synchronicity of having the movie star president then and now having the TV star president now, and like,
Ooh.
Isn't that like a weird, like, what the fuck?
You're so good at connecting the dots. You connect dots from like real far distances to your wingspan's impressive. I like it. But
That's the type of stuff I think of. I'm like, well, yeah, like these are the people that are supposed to get us through these type of times, and look how they've done. But then again, with history repeating itself, look at the people that we have ended up choosing at what time we chose them, and it's like, well, it's our fault too, I guess. We didn't learn nothing from the last time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the PR campaigns, the technology of mind manipulation these days. I don't think it's fair anymore to even act like it's our fault or our problem. I think it's boomers' faults for walking us into this when they had the liberty. No, they were all trained to be scared when they were kids. They were afraid of the bombs.
Yeah.
It was no, but the mental manipulation. We really are pretty fucked. It's like I was a weird. It's like glitches happen to set us out of the like. Okay, so there's like the Matrix thing, and like they pull Neo out, right? Like they contact him and pull him out, right? And I'm like, my thing is that little click over there running around in their slick ass leather and shit, and I just woke up in my pod like and like pulled this thing out of the back of my head, and then pushed the fucking top off, and like slammed and slithered my ass all the way down a bunch of metal and whatever fucking that glass looking shit is that's probably not actually glass, and like I'm on the ground naked and hungry and I don't know where I am and everything's just artificial, like that's waking up to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like once I got into that space when I was in my fucking baby adulthood, like shit like this just doesn't impress me that much. Like I'm like, I can slow down for a second and I can just look. I don't need to immediately start forming opinions or acting right away. Like when I do act, I'll try to be exact with that and sure, but also aware that I might want to stop and redirect for fuck's sake. I'm just like, what is going on in everybody else's heads in this world? Like so many people's heads, not everybody else's, because there's like the gems. I see these little lights.
I think that's part of it, is like when you're saying what's going on in everyone else's head. because I feel like in a way that I kind of live in my own world and I don't necessarily participate as much in what everyone else is worried about, because it's like if you think about what the stuff that they tell us on TV and all that stuff, like it really isn't affecting people as like directly and deliberately as they make it. And like nowadays, with like you said, with technology, they appeal to our baser instincts and desires. And like we know that this technology and all of this stuff is not good for us, but we can't stop being connected to it.
We're doing it right now.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now. The irony
Yeah.
of 2020 and
Yep, 2020 and I like it.
man, and we get to 2020 for the next 10 years because we are coming up on 2021. It's about to be 2020's first birthday.
Right?
It's about to be 2020's birthday. Fuck New Year's.
Yeah, she ain't going nowhere. She ain't going nowhere. Yep.
Yep. Bitch ain't going nowhere.
Oh man. Yeah. 2020, man. Well, we're in. This is still like the first week of December. Like in a weird limbo between like now and what 31st. Everybody's unemployment running out.
Yeah, this time of year, I always forget until it's happening, but it's like the year will be moving at like the weird paces it's moving, and then it just starts cascading after it hits that crest, like a little over halfway, and then it goes into a freeze mode right between Thanksgiving and Christmas, where it's like forever.
Where it just feels like in Alaska where it's daytime all the time. You're just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, but it's like nighttime all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always sleep weird during like eclipse season and like the wintertime, like when this weather change, season change, like that kind of shit. I'm always like just awake. Like things are different. The environment's feeling different. What is going on?
I have a theory on that. So you're a Taurus, right?
I am.
Okay, so I'm an Aries, and the full moon in Aries normally comes in October, and then I think Taurus is November. And I feel like my little theory is that like when the full moon comes in Aries, I similarly like don't really need to sleep. And I'm like, I feel as if like maybe our battery is back to 100, and so like we're like operating at our highest after the full moon in our sun sign. And so then like I notice that I don't really need sleep, but then I force myself to sleep, which gets me on this weird pattern of like trying to adhere to like normal patterns, but like I don't really need to. I don't need to really like I'm not as hungry. I don't need to like there's so many different things.
Whoa.
So I wonder what you feel the same way?
You're blowing my mind.
Like not as hungry?
I wish we were doing it on video right now. I'm freaking out, dude. Shit.
I don't know. I just pay attention to like what like the moons and stuff like that. And so like I'm always trying to figure out like why am I acting different right now? Like then when that full moon comes in, I'm like, okay, like I'm back to 100% Tiana. And then as we get closer to the new moon, I'm always like, okay, yeah, I feel like my sleeping and everything is coming back into like a normal circadian rhythm, or a rhythm that I recognize, even though it can be upside down from everyone else's. I have my own rhythm by that point.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm going to pay attention to that. When's the new moon coming in Taurus? How's that? That's got to be at the other side of the year, right?
Yeah, the new moon in Taurus normally comes around the beginning of Taurus season, or during Taurus season at some point.
Interesting. I slept through April, and like the end of April, like the beginning of May up until the 15th. I was like basically asleep, unless I was working. I was eating or sleeping. I only remember it because it was like I hit like a depression wall because all the people started doing their we don't give a shit. It was a do your own pandemic rules. Choose your own pandemic rules book. They were doing that. Choose your own pandemic adventure book all the time for everybody. I'm going to just write it this way. I'm going to just write it that way. I'm going to go so fast, so hard, so quickly that I don't have time to learn anything. And then I'll act confused when people are like, slow the fuck down, bucko. Like, that's, so yeah, that sent me into a whole, I just was like, I'm going to get in bed and eat from my bed. That's,
Yeah, that's about around new moon in Taurus was April 22nd.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, how weird to be able to retroact. Because I have a terrible memory. I got a terrible fucking memory, especially with trauma shit. It's like I either remember the hell out of it for reasons or I don't at all. And damn. All right.
I feel like everyone's gonna remember 2020 better than any other year. Like I can track 2020 like in my mind. Like, oh yeah, I was doing this and doing that. Like in April, May, I was doing this, June this. But take me back to like any other year, that shit will be a blur. I have to go back and look at my journals or my pictures.
Mm.
So I think that's a weird thing, a weird result we're gonna have from 2020.
I got some things that are in my memory as memories, but it's more like I know what happened. I can't quite remember it, but I know what happened.
Mm.
And I'm writing something that requires me to have a timeline outline. Basically, I made like a spreadsheet of years and months, and I'm like plugging in events,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a lot of fucking shit on it. Like it's just got a lot of shit on it from 2020.
Yeah.
Like so much fucking shit. Some years it's weird looking at all the years because some of them are almost empty, or they just have like they're not empty, but they've got like 3 or 4 hallmark moments, like milestone kind of events that were like just because it was a year, like a
Right.
birthday or like whatever. And then some of the years it's just like they go on and on and on, and I don't have enough room in the one area, so I got to create another column to be like, okay, there's more themes to separate if I sort it a slightly different way, and I can look at it easier if I do that. And so yeah, for this creative project, or like uh, it's weird because it feels like the word creative is a little lackluster on it.
Right.
Like it's more than that, but for that, I created this thing, and it's become a more useful tool in other ways that I didn't intend for it to, I guess.
Ain't it always the way? We think we doing something and you're like, what? This is great. This can work for
Yeah.
so many things. I thought I was making this for this reason, but then you realize it wasn't me. It must have been the ancestors. Somebody else was here. Yeah, you be thinking we doing something.
Yeah, yeah. There seems no plan because it is all plan. There seems no center because it is all center.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's like you were saying with the wilderness thing. That's an interesting.
That's just been in my head, like ever since you said what you said about screaming into the abyss. I just, yeah, I got a lot of church, a lot of Bible in me, so it's like a lot of those little things pop up in my head. And I think it's in Isaiah, but then again, I'm not sure because I know it's in the New Testament. But it's basically saying there's a voice of one crying in the wilderness, and I believe it's in reference to John the Baptist. But the way that it came to me was just like, yeah, like that's exactly what you're doing. It's like crying in the wilderness. Like you're just like screaming it out, but at the same time, the wilderness in my mind is like some like foggy like area where you can only see like what's around you within like 2 feet. And I feel like once you put your voice out, I feel like that's when everybody realized like, oh, we're not alone. Like that's how me and you even connected. Like I was on Instagram going through stories, and your voice sounded like mine. Like
Mhm.
your voice sounded like you were saying things that I was thinking or feeling, and I was just like I couldn't even be like cool about it. I don't even remember what I said, but like, yo, yo, this is everything you're saying is amazing, and I love it, and whatever I said. But that's how we start our connection. But it's like that's what we need to do. We need to scream into the abyss. We need to cry out in the wilderness because we might all realize that our voices create a beautiful harmony that bring us all together to realize, like, if you're not alone and you have support, or you have even someone that understands the muck that you're in. Maybe it's not even the same, but
Mm.
it's just like just to have somebody to be like, yeah, like I see you, I feel you, I know, I understand. Or if I don't understand, I'm here to listen to understand. Mm. But I feel like that's the whole thing with this virus and stuff. We all had to be isolated and deal with our shit. Like the things that make us like, the things that you don't have time to think about because you're rushing here or there and everywhere. Like we had time to really sit and like think and like feel our feelings and be honest about them. So it's like, at which point are we going to realize that we need each other? That's why we're feeling the way we feel in this isolation, is because we need that community. We need people. We need support. Just like everything feels better with support. Have a moment where you don't need to be holding yourself up at all times. Like, okay, that moment of rest and being able to trust in someone else for even just that second is amazing. It's amazing for our growth and our healing and our like propelling ourselves forward through this mess.
Yes. Yeah. We have a lot more power than we like let ourselves access a lot of the time. There's like stuff stopping us, like trying to, but we be succumbing to it. Like there's got to be mindful intent. There's got to be awareness that like there's an onslaught to kind of keep us in our isolated positions.
Oh yeah.
And how that works is again with that disproportionate weight concept. It moves at different paces with different people and looks like different things.
That's how you know when you think about the actual, like you said, to keep us in our isolation. That's how you know, like that's powerful. How powerful connection is when you think about how much is going against keeping us disconnected and divided. Because the thing about division is like, I always feel like unity, division, whatever, like honestly, unity is not necessarily necessary. Because unity oftentimes turns into conformity. But if we just respect and consider each other and realize that we are not necessarily divided, but we all different. We all got these different perspectives and realities that we're traversing. So if you can understand that as fact and not necessarily always expect there to be some similarity or some sort of reason that we can connect, then it's like, okay, like, oh yeah, you're doing that, I'm doing this. All right, let's make sure we are considerate of each other, not harming each other, and we can be cool. We can get through this together.
In my mind, I just imagined like a bunch of dodo birds and like a bunch of like figure eights woven in and out of each other. So it's like circles, but there's no like beginning or end. And some of them are like corners, but all of them are like beak to butt in some way. And they're just like pecking each other in the ass. And it's like, who stops 1st?
Right. But then, like, yo, all right, if you're going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. That's us.
Right. Yeah, we're hella dodo bird. We're hella dodo birding about it. Like, we're like, we are dodo birding. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's stupid as it. It's like, I asked Ryan last night, I was like, when I say ice melts the same way, does that mean anything to you? Does it just immediately resonate as like a meaningful statement in what I intended to mean? And he sat for a second quietly, and he just was like, well, yeah, but like, I mean, why wouldn't it? And I was like, see, that's the point of it all. I think that's why, because it just erupted out of me so quickly. I was like, have I heard that before? Did I just make that up? Has this happened so many times in my life that I have made something really real for the community that I can offer and be like, guys, I've got something for us. It doesn't even mean anything, but like it means everything. Like it's like,
right?
Because like, why wouldn't it melt the same way every time? But like, it's surprising nonetheless. Maybe not surprising, but I'm shook I'm shook sometimes by it. Ooh, it's melting. My goodness. It's not in a freezer. It's not in an area where, like, something's maintaining it. So there it goes. Or in its natural environment. So there it goes. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. Let's make that clear. I don't know.
Yes. Yes, to clarify, neither one of us fucking knows. That's in summation. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh man, I love this.
Yeah, no, this is a good time. And yeah, no, really, it's like I was listening to a lot of podcasts for my mental health early on this year. Before the pandemic, also, I fell into a rabbit hole with this one guy who was doing all this work on like historical stuff and sociopolitics and just all this stuff. And he was doing this project about like it could happen here, and it was this oral like war narrative, like an alternate now kind of something, walking through something. And it was like 2 months later, it all started happening. And I was listening to him. He was funny and kind of walking through a lot of things, and he was stressed, but he was still he was carrying a lot of levity, and he kind of fell apart like real quick. And then just it was like the Cassandra effect on him. It wasn't quite, he doesn't get a full Cassandra effect because he's a cishet white man, so he like gets praised when he's right. Like it's like he does the predictions, and then everybody's like, "Oh, put him on a pedestal, higher, erect it further." Like that's crank it up, stroke it. Yeah. Okay. So that's what happens for them with the Cassandra effect. Just to be totally clear about that too. I know something. I know that.
Yeah.
I do know that. So yeah, then just kind of everybody I listened to, like they were all kind of sensitive empath types, and for the most part, it was like 90% of them just kind of deteriorated into despair, like having to work from home with bad equipment and not having the producers with them, not having their asses wiped in the studio. They all just kind of fell apart. And I was like, oh, I should start something because I think I think they might like to listen to me right now. And then as the summer progressed, that seemed like a better and better idea, but I had less and less bandwidth and resources to do it. And then come September, I just like shot to the moon away from everybody else in my we were in an agreeable sphere with some disagreements, right? Me and these types of people, progressive podcasters, mainstream progressive podcasters. Then suddenly they needed to become Democrat apologists that were like, well, we'll push them left, all of them. And I was like, wait, you're going to do that? And then the ones that didn't feel that way just went silent. And I was like, I can't even listen to you guys anymore. And I just got mean and started posting mean, mad things all over the fucking internet all the time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, I started this podcast when I was still being mean and mad. And, I didn't think it was going to be liminal. I didn't think it was going to transition away into a different space, but look at it go.
Mean and mad is always we could always go back there, so don't push us.
Sure thing. And I'm still I still have plenty of mean and mad tabs open, running active processes right this moment. But
yeah,
the operating system itself is not corrupted. I still got poem hiccups, I guess. Gosh, I keep the last one I entered into thinking we'll talk like 40 minutes or so.
Oh damn, we already up.
Yeah, no, we talk. I get mixed feedback around what people want as far as length goes. And I'm working on developing another podcast that's going to be short episodes. They're going to be 10 to 20 minutes on media analysis. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Stoked about that shit. Yeah, so this one I'm kind of like, they come as they come. Good Morning Mayberry, we're talking.
Yeah, people watch hour-long TV shows, and I mean, you can listen to
Netflix.
Yeah, right. You can listen.
Yeah, and then this is season 1's finale episode.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Surprise. And it's called, I knew this already, it's called There seems no plan because it is all planned. There seems no center because it is all center. It told me a few days ago what its name was going to be.
And look at here where we are.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Oh, that's dope. I'm excited.
Yeah. Thank you again for all of your wisdom and your presence.
Thank you. I appreciate you. This is a dope ass thing we got here. So I look forward to continuing it.
Yeah, you really are. You're an unbelievably wonderful component to be including in this cluster of folks. Yeah, it's just so divine. It's so divine. We'd like to thank our patrons on Patreon and everyone who's bought our merchandise on TeePublic. Find the links to all that stuff and our social links on goodmorningmayberry.com. We've got closed captioned episodes on YouTube. Subscribe, listen, and rate us on all the podcast spots. If you're wondering who we are, we is me and my demons. And you can join the Legion by following our Tumblr, Twitter, or Instagram, jumping on the Patreon, or just buying one of our shirts and wearing that around, drinking the tears of whoever you like the least out of one of our mugs. And coming back and checking out the next episode. I'm Shift. And always remember to never forget, there seems no plan because it is all plan. There seems no center because it is all center.